Hello, dear viewers. Namaskar. Welcome to Moksha Media. You are with Moksha Hiremat. So many persons tried their best for sustaining Kannada language, literature, art, and culture. Karnataka was split into 6 divisions at the time of British rulers. Nizam's Hyderabad and Kodagu were independent states. Mysore, Madras Presidency, and Bombay Presidency were under the reign of Britishers, and Jamakandi, Savanuru, Mudol were other provinces. So like this, it was split into 6 divisions. Britishers again divided it in so many types in the form of provinces, castes, categories, kings, cultures, education, etc., for their own ends. But anyhow, to a little extent, some changes they made were come to our help. I cannot say it fully, but I cannot deny the positive aspect of those changes. But the hegemony of one was passed into the hegemony of another one. That was the thing. After the defeat of Tippu in 4th Karnataka War in 1790, there was no one to question Britishers in Karnataka in particular and India in general. Whatever they did, that became a law unto themselves. Anyhow, Karnataka was split into so many divisions. In different divisions, different languages were dominant. Suppose Urdu was dominant in Nizam state, Marathi was dominant in Bombay Presidency, Tamil became a dominant in Madras Presidency, and others in their own ways. Once upon a time, Kannada was a dominated language in the whole world. But at the time of other rulers and Britishers, it was lost its shining elements. In order to get those shining elements, so many persons were tried their best to have that culture and language again and again. They thought that if they lost language, then they could have lost everything. That is why they went in search of different ways to sustain Kannada language, literature, art and culture. And at that time, there were no that much of schools. Some schools were here and there, but they were not that much of good. Especially in Bombay, Karnataka, there were no schools. Some schools were maintained by mutts. They were teaching in temples attached to Veerashaiva mutts especially. The people did not show that much of interest at that time. So British understood it for its own sake. So it had begun its own school in Bombay, Karnataka and elsewhere in Karnataka and other presidencies. They started English medium schools in which they taught Machiavellian system of education. Macaulay told that we are going to provide education to the people of this country in a way that they should be Indians in blood and color, but Englishmen in taste and in aestheticness and in learning a language, science, etc., etc. But of course, when compared to that English language, Kannada was so ahead. English had a little bit of history, but Kannada had its own and is even today has its own history. But Britishers as a rulers introduced their type of education. So they brought it in a big way. There were a little bit of, or there were a few persons who knew the languages at that time. And especially the administrator W. Russell, a director of public instruction, did a lot of work in establishing Kannada schools in Bombay Presidency. And the schools were started under the caption normal schools. They were not attached to temples or mutts, but somewhere they were attached to churches in a different way. And the persons who knew alphabet were appointed as teachers, and for further education they were sent to Pune, Bombay, Belgaum, etc., etc. Because Pune was the center of education at that time. And if they had a lot of money, they could go to Bombay also. So many persons, including Mokshagundam Visvesvaraya, went to Pune to study engineering. But of course, there were so many students who wanted to have engineering in Karnataka at that time. They had a little bit of opportunity. And Deputy Channa Basappa was one of them. Deputy Channa Basappa was an educationist, an engineer, an organizer, a good administrator, a mathematician, a writer, and a journalist, and a fighter for unification of Karnataka in his own way. Most of you might have heard the name of Deputy Channa Basappa, but we did not know what he did at that time in order to sustain Kannada language, literature, art and culture, architecture, etc., etc. So whenever we talk of this, especially in the month of November, in which we celebrate Kannada festival, we have to remember persons like Deputy Channa Basappa. Accidentally, Channa Basappa was also born on 1st November 1833 in Dharwad. Of course, he was not a Dharwadian. His ancestors were belonged to Gokak in the district of Belgaum under Bombay Presidency at that time. But due to some problems, Deputy Channa Basappa's ancestors were migrated to Dharwad and they became Dharwadians afterwards. So Channa Basappa was born in Dharwad at that time. His family was a poor one. He learned at a mutt school. But he didn't have a lot of money, he didn't have money to further his education. But he had a lot of interest to go or to have the higher education. But anyhow, he went to Pune from Dharwad on barefoot. You think of the situation prevailed at that time. It also showed his interest. He went to Pune and got the shelter of someone, and he entered into English medium school. He learned the alphabet of it and other things also. Then he chose his course as an engineer, and of course at that time Dadabhai Nauroji suggested his name to the Coppers Engineering College in London. But anyhow, that project had not come into action due to so many reasons. He selected 5 students and Deputy Channa Basappa was one of them. Anyhow, he got his engineering degree, but he did not join as an engineer. At that time, engineer was not a status job. It was a job of serving, but not administering. Now the situation is different. Engineering students think that they were the sons or they were the children of this Google, this thing and that thing. But that was not the situation at that time. The persons who didn't get seats in other social or other art courses, such persons would go to science or would select science courses and other things. So many persons were invited for entering into medical colleges also, but they denied it. They selected the arts course because they were interested in it, and at that time the engineering and medical were not that much of famous. So Deputy Channa Basappa chose the engineering course and got his degree, but he did not enter into engineering service. And at that time, that W. Russell was there, he was very interested in sustaining Kannada, in developing Kannada, even though he was a Basel missionary from Germany. So he appointed the persons, he chose the persons and appointed the good persons, appointed the merited students to enter into the education department. He appointed them and issued them the order. Of course, at that time it was popular, So Deputy Channa Basappa was joined as a teacher of a normal school, then principal of a training college. Later on, then the training college at Dharwad, which was shifted from Belgaum to Dharwad, became a source of Karnataka College and Karnataka University at Dharwad, because they were in the beginning started in the premises of that Karnataka Training College. Channa Basappa, when he became the Director of Public Instruction, he did so many good things. For the first time, the Department of Public Instruction was established in the whole country of India under the Bombay Presidency. So Channa Basappa became the inspector of that Department of Public Instruction. He was the first person to be appointed as the inspector of schools in the Department of Public Instruction. It was such a great post at that time. And he opened hundreds of Kannada medium schools here and there in the Bombay Presidency. Those schools produced a lot of students which stood in front of Kannada language and literature later onwards. So he was an honest person, and he did not like corruption. If anyone did corruption in the name of him, automatically he would punish them. Now we cannot dream of it, even the given situation of Karnataka. Corruption is the part and parcel of our life in this country. But that was not the situation. That was the time of freedom struggle. That was the time of independence movement. So corruption was not tolerated at any time. Channa Basappa was one of them. His name was not Deputy Channa Basappa, but Deputy was prefixed because he worked as a Deputy Inspector of Department of Public Instruction for the first time for so many years. That is why he was called as Deputy Channa Basappa. If anyone did his BA or MA at that time, they were considered, they were considered in the name of their degree as MA Deshapande or Deputy Channa Basappa, as he worked for so many days, for so many years in the Department of Public Instruction. Deputy Channa Basappa started a journal under a caption Mutt. That Mutt is also continued even today after so many years of its publication in a different caption. Even today the Department of Public Instruction continues publishing the Mutt magazine under caption of Jivana Vikasa Shikshana, I think. So that was the only journal which has been continued from independence to this day. It is not yet stopped. It may have changed its shape, but the content is same. That is the foresightedness of Deputy Channa Basappa. Because beginning a magazine at that time was not that much of easy as we think. Now we can begin a magazine, a website, a blogger, a tube, or Facebook and so many books, so many faces, with so many faces and other things. Sitting in a corner of a room, clicking a button or clicking a mouse, we can do whatever we want. The face may be, the head may be cut. It may be pasted to other side also, because sometimes in the fit of this technique or technology, we become unfit also. That is what now we are going. But we should be very careful. We should not deny the technological development, but at the same time we should be aware of that technological development, to what extent we should accept it, to what extent we should go with it. Because technology should not rule man, instead man should rule technology, then only we get success. So that is what we have to do. Channa Basappa understood it very properly, and so he gave a scientific education, he introduced a scientific kind of education in those public schools at that time. Even our government started so many Kannada schools, but on the one side it started Kannada schools, and on the other side it is going on and on closing those schools. But that was not the habit at that time. So he started so many schools. Those schools produced so many good students, not the students of men in the feminine face, not the feminine students in the face of man also. So now it is quite different. What we have started keeping in mind has been changed completely. A girl student behave as a boy student behave as a girl student. Sometimes we don't know whether it is a boy or girl, whether it is a feminine or masculine, whether its mind is like that or not that. And at the same time, they feel that they are very superior, they are more than Google. Even Google do not think that it is a Brahma, but these students think that, these products think that they are the Brahmas. But actually they are not a Brahma, they don't have anything in their mind except their ego. But that was not the situation at that time. So Deputy Channa Basappa understood it, and he planned and projected the things in such a way that the students who came out of those schools should be good, should be a not curse to the society, but should be a boon to the society. Now we do not say this thing regarding our younger generation. The generation which come out of our colleges and universities do not become a boon, but they become a bane for the society. That should not be happened because we spent crores of rupees on these fellows, but they are unable to even pay a 5 paise, a single NP to the society. That is not a good situation. So Deputy Channa Basappa understood it. So he said it in the journal Mutt also. Then he started a village for the poor persons under the caption Veerashaiva Hostel, where he provided where meals and lodgings were provided for their study. And of course, even today, those hostels are there in different forms. And he spent his own money on this hostel also. In order to maintain the hostel, he sold out his own house when he faced a problem while maintaining the hostel. In such a way, they were committed to the community. In such a way, they were dedicated their life, he dedicated his life for the development of community and the society and the country. Of course, language, literature and culture. So, we should not in a position to forget persons like Deputy Channa Basappa. So he was not only an engineer, educationist or organizer, he was a writer also. For the first time he introduced the story of Macbeth and comedy errors of Shakespeare to the people of Kannada and Karnataka. He wrote stories based on Shakespeare's comedy of errors, that ನಗಲಾರದವರನ್ನು ನಗಿಸುವ ಕಥೆಗಳು, and other Macbeth, very famous, well-known dramas of Shakespeare. Even today they are famous. So he introduced those stories based on the drama of comedy of errors and Macbeth to the Kannada knowing people. And these things were not that much of easy at that time. Now we feel it very easy. Even today we are unable to write pages together. We are able to write only paragraphs but not pages. But that was not the situation at that time. They organized, administered and devoted and committed to the society, and for that they sacrificed a lot. So in such a way, we have to remember that Deputy Channa Basappa. Of course, he did not live for a long time. He died at the age of 45 or 47, I think. So even today, he died at the young age, that is a young age, of course. He did a lot of good work. So that is why we should remember in this month Deputy Channa Basappa not only as an able administrator and donor and contributor, as a journalist and as a writer. So Deputy Channa Basappa passed away on 4th January, I think, in 1881. Of course, he was the contemporary of E.P. Rice, B.L. Rice, and W. Russet, and Juggler, Ferdinand Kittle, and etc. etc. These are very well-known personalities in the development of Kannada language, literature, culture, and etc. Even though Ferdinand Kittle, a German missionary, played a dominant role in the development of Kannada language and literature. His contribution of dictionary in Kannada is a good example. Of course, we should not forget Ferdinand Kittle also. I think I have done an episode on Ferdinand Kittle also. Anyhow, these are the personalities and persons we have to remember in our life. And of course, they would become the exemplary persons for the development of a society, for the development of humanity. Subscribe and share, and see you in the next episode. Namaskar. Thank you.